All right. Well, first of all, thank you so much for doing this and making the time to do these interviews. How are you doing?
So far, so good. And you?
I'm doing fine. It's really snowy in Finland, so it's like just staying inside. But anyway, the last time we talked was during the promo day in Finland of the Great War, so in 2019. And a lot has happened to the world since. How have you been?
Well, I haven't. Well, we have done fewer concerts than we would normally do during that time, to be honest. But no, been quite, under the circumstances, which are shitty and fucked up in every way. But considering that, not too bad, actually.
Yeah. I mean, you were also productive by creating this new album. Do you think you would have been able to make this album if it were not for the pandemic?
Absolutely not. I mean, we'd probably still be touring on the Great War until late last year, I guess, which is when we would have taken a break or something like that to write new music. And not only the album, we have single songs like The Royal Guard, Leave Guarded, Defense of Moscow, Steel Commanders, and stuff like that. So absolutely not. I mean, if it wasn't for the pandemic, we would not have had this album, especially not this fast, and possibly not even about World War I even.
Now, this kind of, I guess, maybe part 2 of your World War I albums. What gave you the idea to make a new one? Is it just because you didn't have the time to include all stories you wanted to in the first round?
Yeah, a little bit of. It's a mix of 3 reasons. I haven't figured out yet which one is bigger and which is. But in general, we had some stories we really wanted to tell, but we didn't have the right music, and those would be Christmas Truce, Hellfighters, stuff like that. Great stories that we felt like we had to abandon. And also, since we announced that we were going to do the Great War, I mean, the previous album, we had a lot of people sending us emails or giving us books on the tours about events during World War I. And quite a few where we went, how the fuck did we not know about this, So that in combination with the fact that the Great War tour was cut short. We did a lot of Europe, but not all of it. We did half of Russia and a little bit in North America. But that's about it, all we had time to do. So if we would have done something totally different, like Napoleonic era, which would have been really interesting, I would love to do that, but that would sort of make the songs from World War I, or especially the Great War, feel irrelevant. And then let's say we go to Japan, Australia, South America, other places in Europe and North America that we didn't play. And that would sort of mean that we sort of had to abandon some of these songs. And we never played Seven Pillars of Wisdom or, some of these songs for them, or Great War for that matter. So with this in mind, all of those 3, we figured like, hey, then it'll make total sense for us to have of course, we're going to play other songs that aren't about World War I as well, but it would make total sense to have a World War I part of the show where all of these things are still relevant and belong together.
Yeah, and I guess you really thought out your production of that as well, of the Great War, so it would make sense to kind of also keep the same style, at least, I guess.
Oh yeah, same style. But at least, I mean, we're very creative people. We started building the stage set in October already, so it's already done and waiting, and we have a lot of extra stuff built on top of it, what we already had, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, looking forward to see that. Now, I read or heard somewhere that there were some lessons you took from the Great War and that you took that into account while producing this album. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah. One of the things I found when listening to the Great War, I mean, every time we know we're going into a new album production, I like to listen to not all of everything we have ever done, but a few songs here and there, and some albums from beginning to end, to see, is there anything we did good, particularly here? or anything we did bad. And one of the bad things I found on Great War, even though it might not necessarily be a bad thing individually, like listen to any song or any 3 songs, and I had no problem with the production whatsoever. But listening to all of the album from beginning to end, and not the history edition, but the regular version, then my ears were a bit tired after listening to the whole album. It was a bit exhausting, not like it sounded bad, but it was a side effect I don't think we anticipated. So trying to avoid that, make it sound even better and less harsh, and so you're not all exhausted after listening to it.
Yeah. Were there also some good things you thought about from re-listening to your material?
Yeah, that also goes to the production, I think. As it's something was not good, it's more about the big picture, not the individual things. And there were several things we liked about the sound, especially when it came to choir production, drum sounds and stuff like that we really enjoyed. So I mean, it is a different sounding album, but the elements of what we liked of the drum sound, for example, on the Great War are still there. Songwriting wise, yeah, maybe we wanted a little bit less of dark of an album, because with possible exceptions of maybe, well, Devil Dogs and a few more, it somehow feels pretty dark, the whole Great War album. And this has a certain amount of darkness to it as well, but slightly less, I think.
Is that also why you decided to kind of end maybe on a more positive note?
Well, yes and no. We end with in a positive way, where Versailles is in major key, but it also towards the end it switches into minor again. So if there was a message there, it was like, yeah, let's happy the war is over, but wait.
Is this kind of a prelude to a World War II themed album or something like that?
I don't think so. I mean, you could take it like that. I mean, we've done World War II albums before. I mean, both Coat of Arms and Heroes are only about World War II stories, actually. But yeah, it feels like we should do another one. There's certainly enough material to take from there. But at this moment, yeah, it feels like we want to do something different as a theme. I mean, a theme, what does that include? I mean, we did a themed album or a concept album, whatever you want to call it, on Last Stand. And that includes pretty much everything from ancient Greek, the Greco-Persian War, thousands of years ago, up until, well, the modern, well, slightly modern 80s Soviet-Afghan conflict.
Now, if I remember correctly, with the Great War, you found it a bit tricky and difficult to make it kind of chronological because of events like, for instance, Verdun. But I was wondering, I didn't check the dates or anything for this album and the events, but is this album a little bit more chronological, or how did you structure it this time around?
Now, we learned already from the past experiences here. I mean, obviously, Sarajevo and Versailles, they serve as a framework to set the start and the end point. But as we said on the last album, some of these are about people who were in almost the whole conflict. And some of them, let's say Harlem Hellfighters, they were there for 9 months, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember exactly. It seems like I've forgotten more than I learned in the last year. But it's a situation where both battles take a long time, and they're not only one day, but also no matter how close we got to a chronological experience, the listening experience was a bit worse, because you want for a listener to be surprised. Oh, what's going on here? And then something, more familiar territory, and then something fast, and then something slow, and then another surprise. And it's a worse listening experience if you listened strictly chronologically. And also, as you mentioned earlier, it cannot be done chronologically, because some songs are about people who were there for pretty much the entirety of the war.
Yeah, or you should start writing medleys or something if you want to do that.
Ah,
guess.
that'd be interesting. That twist into the next.
Yeah.
Fun thing. Oh, but
Yeah.
what a fucking pain in the ass to produce. Oh shit. Ooh.
Yeah, I guess so. You talked about that you also heard some stories that you hadn't heard before. What are some examples of that?
That we haven't heard before for this album, the White Friday events that is in Soldier of Heaven, I would say. The story of Milunka Savic that we sing about in Lady of the Dark, I think is the name of that track. So there are a few. I mean, obviously there were some that were on our mind as well, like Stormtroopers. It's not like we were unaware of the development of those kinds of tactics during World War I, but maybe we, in some cases, even if we were aware of the circumstances and the events, it's not until we found that piece of information that made us excited about it, that made us decide to do the song, you know.
Now, for me, it felt a little bit like the songs, they have a new sort of energy, but maybe that's also because the Great War, like you said, was a little bit dark. And if you take, for instance, in Christmas Truce, I thought there was a nice moment with really subtle choirs in the background that gave it somehow a more soulful atmosphere or something like that. And I think there's a lot of these moments in the album. Were there like things you did differently with those things a little bit?
Yeah, I think you hit on one of the major things on Christmas Truce. It's a gospel choir on that song. We've never used that before. We've only used traditional church choir, borrowed old teachers and friends, you know, and they are still on the album on many of the tracks. For example, The Race to the Sea, which is a very typical Sabaton song. But no, I think we were, one of the strengths of Great War was taken even further, and that was the diversity of the album. It was almost there, but we wanted even more. It was so refreshing where to have a song like The War to End All Wars, which is on that album, followed by In Flanders Fields, for example, the way it ended. It's so much contrast. And we try to incorporate more of that on this album and not worry so much about what's expected, but rather what's unexpected, you know, in a sense. It can still be Sabaton and still be something that you didn't see coming, and that was kind of liberating and experimenting. For example, me and Chris sat down and wrote the story of the Hellfighters, really guitar intensive, technical, hard song. But then at some point we were just, you know what? It shouldn't be this hard all the time. I'm tired of fucking, you know, syncopations and micro guitar riffs everywhere. Let's do something easy. And me and Chris said, okay, here's the one thing. Nothing can be complicated. No tricky guitar riffs. Let's just write something that's enjoyable and fun. And that became Soldier of Heaven.
I wanted to ask about that because there are a little bit more electronic elements in the verses of that song than I would maybe expect from a Sabaton song. So yeah, but in general, do you feel like this experimenting, was this a lot more fun for you? And is that something that you want to do more in the future as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Why not? But in a sense, it isn't as different as people think. That dun 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 dun, that little synthesizer. It's been there on Shiroyama. It was there on the Great War. That same theory. It's not the same exactly, but the same theory was used on A Ghost in the Trenches, on Lost Battalion, for example. So it's nothing new there. The only thing that's audible that I think most people would agree on, it sets the 80s directly, is the sort of toms. Do 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 do. That's stereotypical. We put them in there for a laugh because it was fun, you know. And then you read comments now, and I don't like it because the drum sounds so synthetic and it's no real drums. It's the same fucking drums. It's real drums everywhere except those do 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 do. 4 samples, you know, being used. Otherwise, it's regular drums being produced just like fucking normal heavy metal. So it's funny because all of the things that are actually different and new to the song are the stuff we put in the chorus that nobody fucking noticed.
What is that then? Or is it just what you mean that you wanted to make things less complex?
No, we were just having fun. There are hand claps in the background. You can hear a little bit of it towards the end of the song. We left it just, otherwise people wouldn't notice, for fun. But when you hear that, that sort of guitar tremolos, gated on and off guitars that Judas Priest used in Turbo. We have claps, we have all kinds of different percussion effects and, small fun production touches, but they're not really audible unless you really know what you're listening for in the chorus. But yeah, lots of.
What I also thought is that some of these songs, they really have this kind of an atmosphere that they would sound great for instance, in the Unkillable Soldier, you have this part where you sing "oh" or something like that. And I think that would be cool on a festival because I can imagine the people singing along. But is that something that happened maybe because you miss live shows, or is that something you put in your songs kind of intentionally? Or
a bit of both, I guess. It also comes down to, I loved going to a concert and still do, and singing along. And we have noticed that depending on what it is, I mean, in most cases, we'll have something like 40-1, always remember a fallen soldier. But for that song, with those melodies, it didn't sound right with any sort of vocals there, that sing-along part. There were no vocals that were fitting. And the only thing that felt right was sort of, to get everybody wordlessly singing along. I think there are two places like that on the album. Unkillable Soldier and Stormtroopers are wordless sort of sing-along parts. Yeah. While on Race to the Sea, we have this part when we see a king and a soldier fighting shoulder to shoulder. But no, also it's a great way of bringing the song down in a way. Because if you're up here all the time dynamically, where do you go from there? You want a push into the guitar solo, a push into the final chorus, and at that point it's good to give a breather in the middle of the song, a little bit of breathing room, take it down, and then do something different, and then catapult back into familiar territory again, I guess.
Now, what I also noticed is you did in these 2 years, I guess, quite a lot of music videos. How was that process for you guys? Because I guess that's something you do, but maybe not so such a high production, I would say.
Yeah, well, we weren't doing many concerts, were we? Well, I think the beginning was obviously the Royal Guard and Livgardet, which is similarly music, but technically different songs because they tell the story a bit different, and they're two different videos. And then we went into the Defense of Moscow, Steel Commanders, and then we have Christmas Truce, now Soldier of Heaven, and we have 2 more videos coming before this is over. First one is Soldier of Heaven in a couple of days, 10 days or 2 weeks, I guess, before that one is out. No, Unkillable Soldier, sorry. Unkillable Soldier, and then one more when the album is released. So we've done a lot of music videos. Actually, I think when we counted, we've done more music videos in the past 12 months than we did in a decade.
Yeah. Is that something that kind of kept you going? Because I can imagine that it's not so fun, not being able to do what you do for a living, at least.
Well, to be honest, I really dislike making music videos. I fucking hate it, if I'm honest. Especially the performance ones. I mean, Christmas Truce was really fun to do still because it was like a movie set, and we weren't. Yeah, I was playing the piano, but not, in a different way. That we decided to let the story bring it all together, and it was cool because the team we used, they have never done music videos. They do movies. That's what they do, and which was a cool thing to do as a different run. So I really liked that whole thing as well. On the other hand, with music videos and with songs and topics, there's a huge advantage not to do a bloody video, even though I like them. And that is, it cannot be shown in certain circumstances. It cannot be on certain playlists and stuff like that, which I find pathetic for the wrong reasons. But I understand you shouldn't show kids the video to Christmas Truce or the Royal Guard, for example. That makes total sense. But people are so afraid of anything that, in general, if it's not geared towards kids, people are so afraid of that. So it actually turns out that a lot of people like a video, or the current algorithmic online media climate rewards not having too much graphical violence in your videos, which is somewhat disturbing and limiting for a band like Sabaton.
Yeah. What is there a song that you didn't do maybe a video of that you would have wanted to do, but with these kind of algorithmic restrictions you couldn't?
No, actually, not at all. There is only a certain level of leverage we give that. If we think this is the best presentation of a, we always want to throw people off with singles. Some of them should be, oh, Sabaton doing this now, what, possibly to try and scare people. The goal is to get people super scared before every album release, and then they listen to the album. There's the Sabaton I know. But no, we don't really care about those things. It's more of how we chose to do the video. Then with Christmas Truce, we felt, fuck it, it doesn't matter. This has to be done this way, and then we will take the consequences of it. And there are then other songs that will be more suited to have a less violent video in it. And I mean, a song like Soldier of Heaven, that video doesn't suffer at all from not having that level of graphical violence.
Yeah. Do you actually notice a difference with Christmas Truce, or not really? Like in the, in the amount of views and all that sort of stuff.
Oh, yes, a huge amount. Huge amount on how many playlists will take it. And timing is everything. We wrote, Christmas Truce, it's about events on Christmas, but it's just a regular Sabaton song about military history. And when we released it, a lot of playlists like, oh, you can't have a Christmas song now. And it's like, oh, come on, Yeah, it has Christmas in it, of course, because it's central to the story. Otherwise, there would be no fucking Christmas Truce. But if you can only play the Christmas Truce on Christmas, that would also mean that we can only play fucking Primo Victoria on the 6th of June. So, there was that difficulty, but absolutely, there were several media outlets, so to say, that would shy away from Christmas Truce. Even though it's a kind of bass, it's not too hard. It's a waltz with piano, But I guess they thought it was too Meatloaf-ish.
Anyway, yesterday I noticed that Tommy made a Disney version of Swedish Pagans. I was wondering if you listened to that song already.
I've heard it. Yeah. He used to do, I think it was on his Instagram, or was it on his Facebook, back a couple of years when he joined. He would do Disney-ton for fun, but then it wasn't huge production. He was basically sitting by a piano, filming himself with a camera, and sometimes he would play the Sabaton song, but in a major key, and Disney-fy it. Sometimes he would take Sabaton lyrics on a Disney song, or vice versa. So we've been living with the constant fear of Disney-ton for quite some time now.
Are there any songs you actually would like to have a Disney version of?
Well, he did some back in the day. Maybe they're still online. I think they should be, I guess. There are a few Sabaton songs because now he basically took, I can't remember if it was Hercules or something, but he took sort of the whole melody and just put Swedish Pagans lyrics onto it. While I thought it was, it's just he's better than that, you know. Back further when he was experimenting with, I don't know, it was 40-1 or some other Sabaton song, and it was still that song, or Prima Victoria, but he took that song and Disney-fyed it himself. He didn't take a existing Disney song, he took a Sabaton song and Disney-fyed it. And that was really entertaining to see. And he's insanely good at arranging music and taking it to, you know, different places, Tommy. So I would, if there's anything, he can take any song and do more of that rather than taking a song from Hercules or Lion King or whatever, you know. It basically becomes a cover, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, anyway, back to Sabaton. Well, it's of course a little unpredictable still, so I can't really ask you when you're planning to go on tour, but is there anything else that people can expect in 2022 from Sabaton other than a new album?
Yeah, as I said, more videos, but we are expecting to start touring again. That's our main priority. And the only reason that we are not on tour is that we physically can't or aren't physically allowed, you know. It'll take threat of prison or bankruptcy to stop us from doing that. Unfortunately, when it comes to touring, dealing with a tour in several countries is much more complicated than a single one because of governments. And so that's unfortunately the reason why we had to postpone the European tour. While in certain countries, everyone gave us thumbs up and it's clear we can do it. But in other places, it was unclear. In certain places, it was a clear no. And at that point, we can't physically do the tour, you know, which is sad. But new plans are being made at the moment. And I am not too pessimistic, actually, about 2022. Actually, quite the opposite. I get to fucking go on stage again. And that's a great thing.
Yeah. And yeah, that's my last question. Thank you so much for your time. Do you have any last thoughts you want to share with your fans or people who will be watching this?
Thanks for the good memories. I have several thousand memories of being on stage and singing and jumping and having fun with a lot of people. So every time I play, like, or we play Prima Victoria to Hell and Back, I can, you know, I can only listen to these songs now and I can just close my eyes and have a, you know, memory show reel of, you know, thousands upon thousands of people and hundreds or thousands of concerts to remember that at least. So thanks for the memories, I guess.